Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I'm Ryan, your host, and today I am joined with Dr. Carson Brown, who is a psychiatrist. Dr. Brown, we are going to talk a little bit about climate-aware things and eco-anxiety, but why don't you give the listeners an overview, kind of tell them who you are.
Great. Thank you. So happy to be here. My name's Carson Brown. I call myself an integrative or holistic psychiatrist. I think the stereotype of psychiatrist is we meet you for 15 minutes and give you Prozac, but I try to have a more holistic view and think about supplements and herbs, think about psychotherapy, think about mind-body type stuff, spirituality, cultural context. And so that's really just been my lens. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I live in the Twin Cities now. I've been here for 4.5 years and very, very happy to adopt this as my new home. And worked in a group practice for 11 years in the Bay Area and have been on my own in private practice for about the past year.
Hey, well, that's it. Private practice is so exciting. Congratulations.
It's been really fun. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It was kind of a leap, but it has been a lot of growth for me and really fun. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so 4.5 years post-COVID, middle of COVID?
So, right, it was summer 2021. So it was like the tail of COVID. You know, the kids were still wearing masks to school. Yeah, it was semi-emerging. But yeah, we all remember those early 20s years of just being so chaotic.
Yes. And how has winter been treating you?
You know,
this winter's been terrible.
Friday, I think, is going to be the coldest day I've ever experienced this coming Friday. Yeah, you know, my husband's from here is why we came. And part of the agreement was I would just not get any flack for any winter gear I wanted to buy. So I have just
that
really,
you
know that Scandinavian saying, there's no bad weather, just bad clothes. So I just have excellent clothes.
Yes. Yeah. It's the only way to embrace it, right? You either embrace it or you don't.
Yeah. A lot of sauna and just, it can be very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really pretty out, right? The snow right now is like the snow globe snow. So it's pretty, but the 35 below wind chill is Friday won't be great. And we're recording in the middle of January for those who will be listening when this episode drops in March, which hopefully by March it's warmer.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Okay, let's jump in. Let's talk about kind of one of your specialties, climate-aware psychiatry. Kind of what is that? Let's give a little bit of a rundown of what that is.
Great question. I don't think it's really in the common parlance or I see, articles here and there about it. But basically we're looking at, climate change is impacting everything, all sectors of life, agriculture and energy, obviously business. And it's for sure impacting mental health, whether it's right at the top of people's minds or not. There's a lot of different ways of looking at it. This term eco-anxiety, we've seen some recent, big study came out last year in the Lancet that showed 60% of youth ages 16 to 25 were expressing some degrees of climate distress, worried about their future, not sure whether they should pursue their goals and dreams, scared about starting families. They were really pretty directly expressing that fears about the stability of our biosphere were impacting them on a daily basis, entering their thoughts, coming up as really persistent worry and a lot of difficulty planning. So, that's youth, but it's really affecting all ages. I cite that study because it's recent and big and very definitive. But there are lots of different things too about heat waves impacting medications, about heat waves impacting suicidality, suicide rates, farmers impacted and having lots of mental health issues coming up around it. So there's many, many different facets to the topic. Mental health is so complex. Climate change is so complex. When we put them together, it's a really dynamic topic. But to put it really simply, whether it's overt or not, a lot of people are feeling various forms of despair, anxiety, grief, and trauma related to climate change.
I'm so curious about heat waves impacting medication. What does that even mean?
Yeah,
And how?
it's a really good question. Certain medications, and it's especially this antipsychotic, or another word for it is the neuroleptic class. They're more widely used than you might think. They're not just for people with schizophrenia. They're used in a lot of different ways, but they impact our body's inherent abilities to thermoregulate. So when it's very, very hot, people can't access air conditioning, can't access other climate controlled spaces, they can get hyperthermia. Their internal body temperature can get too high, which has all kinds of, can be an emergency and just has all kinds of implications for our physiology. So that's the main one. A lot of public clinics or like county clinics that treat a lot of folks on these medications have heat wave plans in place specifically to be monitoring those folks. They literally have like home visit checklists about whether people have access to air conditioning. If not at home, where could they go? And so it's the ways medications impact our physiology and the way we can maintain our homeostasis are sometimes not fully understood by the folks taking them. And so it's really important to get the education out about it.
So you're maybe one of the, I guess I don't know the stats. I'm just going to say few psychiatrists who are doing therapy alongside medication. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it might be a little bit regional. It seemed more common where I lived in California and maybe less common here. I don't meet a lot of psychiatrists here who do both. And definitely as a field, it seems like psychiatry is just moving much more towards medication and more technological interventions like transcranial magnetic stimulation and some of the other things like that. I think it's largely insurance driven, that insurance doesn't want to reimburse MDs to do psychotherapy when other folks are trained to do that as well, very qualified to do that as well. So there are a lot of various pressures on it. I think it's just the heart of mental health treatment, and that meds alone help some people, but whether people want to do meds and therapy with one person or have a separate therapist and prescriber, either way is great with me. But I really think for deeper change to happen, we need both. And it would just feel very strange to me to work with folks on their mental health without being able to offer what I consider kind of the bedrock of treatment.
Yeah.
So really all the decisions I made along the way in my education and training, just whenever I had a decision to do more psychotherapy, I would take that and get more training there.
Okay. I mean, I imagine that's super cool and supportive to be able to have it all together. Like you get the whole system, right? Whereas I have to like get an ROI, consult with the psychiatrist, hope that we're on the same page, hope the client's reporting the same, like all of those added pieces, but how much more supportive and maybe streamlined it is to have just you.
I think for some folks it works really well. Like I said, I think all different combinations can work, but definitely some people like it that way. And then even people who I'm only prescribing for, I still think you can bring a very psychotherapeutic stance to that interaction, not to interfere with their outside psychotherapy, but just understanding resistances around medication, which are really understandable, understanding traumas people may have experienced before with psychiatrists or with medication, understanding what's happening in the relationship and the power dynamic as people are showing up. I think what we learn in psychotherapy training is just relevant all the time. So I think that part I think it improves my prescribing, even if I'm not working with someone in therapy.
Do you work with adolescents or is it primarily adults?
Yeah, I did not do the additional child and adolescent training. So yeah, I see adults only.
Okay. Yeah. That I just was asking about because my next question, I want to now move more into the climate change topics and
for sure.
Eco-anxiety. I think we're all familiar with like Greta Thunberg and like her kind of setting this ship asail in a very loud and big way. And that's maybe more of like the pop culture reference to this. But this is like climate change and everything going on in the world is not a new concept, right? The world has been kind of battling this for a long time. But what are the trends that you're seeing in your office with your clients around this? Like, what are people concerned about the most?
Great question. One trend I think I would see is people recognizing and connecting that climate doesn't just like stand on its own as a separate topic. People are using words like the poly crisis or really recognizing the intersection that, social justice is part of climate, the political situation is part of climate, because these are decisions being made on a larger scale. People are really not seeing it as just this standalone Earth Day environmentalism, like that it's sort of a pet cause of certain people. People are really seeing that it's just one big thing, which can be both intimidating because it just can feel so big, but it also means there are just so many entry points. There's so many ways to act. There's so many ways to engage. And so I'm really hearing, I didn't hear that 6-7 years ago. Maybe it's sort of post-COVID. People are really understanding how all these different systems overlap and interact and come to bear on just our day-to-day experience. So I'm hearing that a lot more, people understanding the way our economic system drives climate change, people understanding the ways, racial justice, a lot more climate justice conversations, it's just really great to hear that. A lot about colonialism, colonization, people sort of understanding those issues in terms of money and in terms of extractive relationships. It's really sophisticated, and I'm just hearing people who this isn't necessarily a specialized topic of theirs talking in these really sophisticated ways about it. So that's something that's really struck me over the last couple of years. I feel like climate has gone from being sort of a standalone topic to being really seen as part of a larger picture.
Yeah, I think it's great to see people taking time to educate themselves and gain more knowledge around these things. And you're right that it's not as simple as recycling versus putting everything in the landfill.
Yes, really is.
I like it so much. So for someone who is maybe wanting to reduce their footprint, how do you navigate those conversations? Or what are some of the resources, the tips? Because I think we sometimes get in this mindset of I'm only one person. What does it matter?
Yes. So that's such a great question, because I think it really is a common question, common concern. I think there are a lot of ways to come to it. Most commonly, I feel like people are bringing it up in a context of guilt, feeling really bad about their carbon footprint, really overanalyzing their purchases, saying things like, I know how bad fast fashion is, but it's all I can afford, or I really don't want to drive, but there is no bus or train, or I don't want to fly, a lot of that type of stuff. I don't want to fly, but I really want to go meet my new baby niece. So I hear people just in a bind a lot, and a lot of guilt can come from it. A lot of just rumination around decisions and around purchases can get really paralyzing. So I think that is a really common presentation, people twisting themselves into knots to try to be good, when it's so difficult. It's so difficult to be good because, kind of like we said, the systems behind it, the economic systems, make it really hard. So that was just restating the problem, I guess. The way I talk to people about it, and that you're bringing up the helplessness, I kind of hear I'm just one person. What can I really do? Is some of the helpless feeling that I think is so understandable and so common. There's an amazing article. I really love the writer Mary Anais Hegler. She has a novel out, but she also writes just a lot of magazine articles. She has an amazing article called I won't get it quite right. It's I'm an environmental activist and I don't care if you recycle. And it really is she's really pushing this thing of look at the corporations, look at the systems, look at transportation options, beating ourselves up that it's basically impossible to make good choices within the setup, within the society. She's really saying we need to shift our focus. That can be tough because it's easier in our day-to-day life to say, I'm going to try to bike to the grocery store than to be how could I work with my community to advocate for better public transit? They are larger questions, but that's something she really encourages, instead of punishing and flagellating ourselves for not being able to solve these things, to just look one shell bigger and think, what would need to be in place for me to be able to even make a better choice here? So I really love that article. I love her in general. So I think that's one thing we talk about a lot. And this one person thing, the other person I'll bring up, who I'll probably talk a lot more about this in the rest of our conversation, but I really love the framework I use clinically is called The Work That Reconnects, which was started by a woman named Joanna Macy and her colleagues. And really, if people say like, what's one thing I can do to like learn about eco-anxiety or deal with it, I recommend her book, which is called Active Hope. And she talks about this specifically, this feeling of just being one person. And I think she talks about it really eloquently of each of us is just one person. But if each person does the one small thing that they can, all of that collectively is massive. People talk about raindrops forming a river or, other beautiful metaphors like that where yes, we can only act as ourselves. Hopefully we can also act in a community or in a group because that does amplify our action. But I think the feeling of looking around, and this is why protests I think are amazing, each individual deciding to show up, then you see it. You see a huge crowd of people. You hear a loud expression of voices, and it can kind of be both. And I'm one person, but I'm part of something larger too.
So along this, I was just looking at the website, the Work That Reconnects Network.
Yeah. It's great.
How, I guess, for someone who's maybe coming to see you for the first time and is in this existential place of the world is burning down and I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. Which, I think for the last 5 years, we've all felt that way.
Yeah.
Probably
totally.
Since COVID and maybe before.
Yes.
And also being aware that now, the second current administration and all the things happening, but someone coming in who's just I don't even know what to do or where to start. And it's so overwhelming. How do you help them kind of come out of that, right? Because it's not just the suggestion of let's move from plastic bags to reusable bags, right? It's not that.
Right.
That is a simple way to offset your footprint for sure. But It's not, that only feels good for so long. When you were talking about the fast fashion, in my head, I was we're also so desperate for a dopamine hit right now that how do we balance this?
My gosh, that's
how do we balance the fact that I just bought brand new pens because I was so excited and my excitement's already gone over them, but in the moment I needed that.
Yeah. No, I bought these markers.
Oh, those are beautiful.
They made me happy. They're still making me happy, I guess. Yeah. No, I love the dopamine framing. I was literally thinking about that the other day. I was reading this other book called Hospicing Modernity, which is another great book. I really love that book.
That's a title.
Oh yeah,
that's a title.
I have that right here next to me too. Yeah, Vanessa Machado de Oliveira, really good.
Sure. Yeah.
So good, but I'm getting off track. Oh yeah, she was literally talking about neurotransmitters in part. I didn't expect that in this one chapter. And I was we all want dopamine, but what are some other ways to get it? I get it from shopping too. I think we all do.
I think that's the society we were raised in, right? The United States culture is you buy things to feel better.
100%. Consumerism as the antidote for existential woes. Yeah.
And putting your broke down box in the recycling bin does not make anyone happy. It's just a fact of life.
Totally. It's so true. So I think you're asking such a great question because, I think this is a lot of times the initial presentation is overwhelm. I hear that word all the time. And then when you're talking about I feel stuck, I think as mental health folks, we can kind of conceptualize that as freeze. There's nowhere to flight to, this is a global problem. I know some people are thinking about Mars and the moon and stuff, but let's face it, there's no flight from this problem. Fight can be very abstract, who to fight, how to fight. So I think our nervous system in overwhelm goes into freeze a lot with these climate stuff and with the existential problems, as you put it. So that's one way I sort of conceptualize it or interpret it as people are in freeze. Often the first step, because it's impossible to act when we're in freeze. We're shut down. It's sort of by definition, we can't do anything in that nervous system state. The work that reconnects, people are what is the work that reconnects? It's a collection of practices. It's also different rituals, exercises, structured conversations, but it has sort of a central core structure that is these 4 phases. And the first phase of it is grounding in gratitude. And, gratitude can sort of feel like a cliche sometimes or, overstated. But Joanna Macy makes a real case for it being really the most potent resource we have, the most accessible resource we have, that it's not just a platitude or like something on a Instagram post. It's something that if we can really tap in to a felt sense of gratitude, I see it clinically happen that people might resist it a little bit first, like, what can I possibly be grateful for when X, Y, or Z is happening? But if people can stick with it, there usually is always something to feel grateful for in a given moment. And if that can be deepened and really physically felt as a sensation, it really is remarkable to see the nervous system shift that happens in people when they do that. And it can just be a foundation, and it can start to thaw that freeze state a little bit. So people feel a little bit more resourced to even be able to start to think about this. No, I'll pause there.
Do you challenge people to kind of identify their own path, or are you I'm guessing it's similar to like my also role, right? Therapy's kind of similar across the board, but like you're helping on like assisting in various levels based on your client's needs. But I'm curious, like, are you doing more challenging, like encouraging them to challenge the system more rather than like you just laying it all out for them because you're the expert? If that makes
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm definitely not laying it all out, because then even the word expert, I think climate I think it really flattens hierarchies. It really, like, there really is no map. I've maybe been thinking about this and have this one approach, the work that reconnects, and, sure, maybe I've been sort of putting a little bit more attention towards it, but I really feel like it's something that we're kind of all in together. It's such a thing that's impacting the provider as much as it's impacting the patient in a lot of ways. And it's not that I talk about that or share that necessarily, but I see it very much as a partnership. And yeah, I definitely don't lay it out. I wouldn't even use the word challenging to describe my style. This maybe goes back to the work that reconnects again. We talked about this first phase, gratitude. The next phase is honoring our pain for the world, which basically means feeling the feelings, feeling all of that grief, but it's done in a supported and contained way. I think a lot of people are afraid if they open Pandora's box or, start to think about those feelings, that it's just a bottomless pit that we'll never come out of. So people really try to push it away. But as mental health folks, we know that avoidance just amplifies things. So there's a framework of really reframing what that pain is, that it's evidence of caring, it's evidence of interconnection. We wouldn't be grieving for people we don't know, species in other places, plants, if we didn't have really a deep interconnection with them. And just that being brave enough to allow the pain in, it's a form of information. And when it's done in a supported way, that information can actually start to tell us what our next steps might be, not in a forced or challenging way. I see it happen very naturally when people are not alone with these feelings, when they're really normalized, and when it's contextualized as like, no, this is evidence that you're alive, that you care, that you can put yourself in other people's shoes, and that you're brave. I think just opening to the feelings is so courageous and disruptive. So with that type of context, I think people feel a little more open to really diving into the feelings. And then it's amazing. It really does flow into this next phase, which is seeing with new eyes. I see people just really, start to see possibilities, opportunities where they didn't see them before when they were trying to keep the feelings at bay. I've written about this in a blog post before too. I find it so fascinating that Joanna Macy's not from a mental health background, but her insights totally match up with psychological interventions and even with some really cutting edge neuroscience stuff. They've been doing these studies about feeling strong affect leading to insight or various epiphanies or breakthroughs. And she just sees that in her group work, and it really matches up with what we know in the mental health field too. So I think when people are resourced and grounded, when they're supported and in the right context to feel those feelings, a lot of creativity comes out of it. And then the fourth phase going forth, which is more of an action phase, again, it kind of unfolds without me needing to force it or challenge or lay anything out for people. I'm trying to maybe lay out a process, but not necessarily what happens in the process.
Yeah.
That was a really long answer.
No, I loved it. No, I loved it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No. And I was going to ask about the rest of the steps anyway. So that was a good way to kind of tie it all together. Are you, I guess, like a hyper locally here in the cities, like Minneapolis, St. Paul? I feel like we're pretty fortunate, resourced, like to have stores like Tear in South Minneapolis. That's like a no waste store, right? Or like a lot of recycling sites, and Ridwell is huge here, which I think it's big everywhere, but like, I think particularly Minneapolis in general is like a very conscious city.
Completely agree.
And I'm curious how that maybe like compared to your work when you were in California, like what differences you see there.
Yeah, I love both places. So any comparisons I'm making are not at all better or worse kind of comparisons. The cultures are really different. Funny thing is, to me, Minneapolis feels like San Francisco in the 90s. And I say that in the best way.
I believe it.
I'm 48. I'm a Gen Xer. You know, the 90s were like my heyday. San Francisco in the 90s was so creative, so artsy, so queer, so political, so active. You know, coming out of the AIDS crisis, there was so much organizing. The community had been confronted with profound grief, you know, just the AIDS crisis being just so there aren't really words for it, how devastating and heartbreaking it was. But yeah, it was so lively. And then I really did watch it transform in terms of tech. And so it became much less of this sort of hippie progressive town and just became much more about tech. It's always been an expensive place, but got incredibly expensive. And then that makes it tough for artists and activists and more progressive things to just be able to afford to exist. Obviously, there are different pockets in the Bay Area. The East Bay, Oakland, and Berkeley kind of retained a little bit more of the radical progressive activism, but it really changed so much. And so I just remember getting here and being like, oh my gosh, it's so vibrant, like artist studios and like weird little bookstores, you know, just like things that wouldn't be able to afford their rent in San Francisco, because like selling just sci-fi paperbacks, it doesn't pay your San Francisco rent, but it pays your Minneapolis rent. So it just felt like such a relief and such a like beautiful ecosystem. Yeah, the first time I went to like Art Attack and Northrop King building, I was like, there's like a building that's like a city block that's just all artist studios. This is incredible. Yeah, I feel like it's more of a queer city than San Francisco, which is, you know, San Francisco has the reputation for being such the LGBTQ plus like mecca. But I was like, no, this is kind of what I'm used to from when I was younger. So I may be getting really off track and not about mental health here, but yeah, I think it is so vibrant here. The Native communities here. Yeah, just the diversity. You know, it's obviously so topical for us with everything happening right now. But yeah, I had never had Somali food before. I love the Somali community. Really, really beautiful, amazing place. I love it here.
Yeah, it is a really great place to live.
Yeah,
honestly,
I'm really into it.
It's great. And the weird little bookstores like that.
Oh my gosh, it's the best. So but yeah, and all the things you mentioned, yeah, lots of thrifting. I love Tear. Yeah, lots of, I feel like there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, fixing things instead of throwing them away. I feel like there's a big repair culture.
Yeah, and like the buy nothing, like the the community, the communities here around like upcycling. Yes, are massive. And so I think it's like interesting now that we're talking about it in like this context, because I never really put it kind of together in terms of like the eco anxiety and just like that aspect of it. And I like my Buy Nothing group is so active. It's like bonkers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The people in my neighborhood never sleep. Like I swear all we do is just like pick things up and drop things off.
I love it.
But even just thinking about like where I live in this small pocket of South Minneapolis of like having Tear and like the Tropes and Trifles, like the queer women owned bookstore there, like it's so St. Paul just the community aspect that we have here for those, like, when this airs, I hope that some of our political unrest and what's going on here currently in January will have maybe completely stopped, but unlikely settled down maybe a little bit. But to see that and kind of like know the work that you're doing, right, and that I'm doing and that all of us in mental health are doing, I guess my question for you is like, how do you also support people in getting connected with their community especially when they're like in that freeze state and just hopeless and helpless and, to keep
Great
going?
question. I'd be interested in your answer to that too. I want to learn from you on that. Like, how are you doing that? I think the way I think a lot is in terms of lowering barriers. And I think people have like an idea in their mind of what joining a community or what like community activism would have to look like. Does that mean they have to go to 350.org meetings, or does that mean they have to like, pass some organizing class before they can join something?
Right.
So I really try to break that down. Sometimes I love trying to point out what people are already doing. So much of the time we all just like poo-poo what we're already doing. We think it doesn't count or something. So I really like showing people that they're already doing stuff. I think that helps thaw the freeze a little bit too. They're like, oh, I already have some momentum. I wasn't even recognizing that as something that matters or counts, but it does. And so, I'm just always trying to lower barriers. So for community, it's just like, who do you already know? Who do you already spend time with? Who is like one person who you've heard talk about something that you're concerned about? Who could you text and just say like, I was thinking about this and it reminded me of you? I think so much of getting out of freeze and overwhelm is, I guess another way to put it is baby steps. And that baby steps matter intrinsically because they're a step, but also because they tend to then just get the ball rolling. And then once the ball's rolling, kind of who knows what happens. So I just try to start real close in. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
How do you sort of foster community with folks?
I think, so this is like a kind of maybe like a twofold topic, particularly to like the time that we're experiencing now and like the extra need for community, but also like this reputation of Minnesota community and that you cannot like infiltrate if you're not from here, like you cannot infiltrate the groups, right?
Right.
Which I do think in my experience that piece is like very age dependent to like mid-millennial, like Gen Z, like this kind of like 30 to 40 age group that have like had their friends solidified since elementary school.
Yes.
Right.
Preschool.
Yeah. Yes. Even, yes, some. But I attract a lot of like transplant clients.
Yeah.
Who are like, I don't know how to make friends here. Like, even my partner's like born and raised here and like I still can't connect with like that group of women. And I'm like,
yes,
girl, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
Even as someone who's born and raised here, it's hard.
Yes.
So from like that part, that's a little bit more of like a macro conversation of like, let's try to do like some networking events, like get connected in your work, right? Like there's a really cool group called Real Roots. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they're like,
I haven't.
Real Roots, REAL Roots, but they're like doing facilitated meetups. You like fill out a form for the friends you're looking for. There's a facilitated meetup. They kind of connect you with this group of 6 women. And then you get like, essentially it's moderated. So nobody's just like sitting there being like, what do we talk about?
How cool.
And I had so many clients have such great success and have like created friendships now that are lasting years.
That's amazing.
And the company's it's a women-owned company. It's amazing. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Thank you for telling me about that.
Yeah, of course. So those I think are more like macro things. And I have a lot of conversations of like, especially with parents of younger kids of like, your world will change with friendships when your kid goes to kindergarten. Like,
right. Good point.
Or like, like once the door opens up to like play dates and friendships, like, then it changes. It all changes. That like 0 to 4 stage is so isolating.
Yeah,
and just,
totally.
It's a shit show. It's tiring. It's a lot,
Oh my gosh.
And like, do you even have capacity for new friends right now?
Seriously.
Maybe not. And like, I have a 5-year-old who is 100% extroverted. So, she's been making friends since like she could talk, which isn't the case for most kids. I understand.
I love that.
But also like just acknowledging that like, it's not easy to make new friends. It's not easy to make new friends as an adult. and like
It's true.
forming that community.
Yeah, it's true.
On kind of like this other more maybe like centralized like micro place of getting plugged into community, I think we're similar in terms of the baby steps. I'm also having a lot of conversations of like, it doesn't have to do with directly like community doesn't mean like directly conversating with someone. Like your involvement in community can look different. If you're just like delivering groceries, that's involvement in community.
Yeah.
You know, again, particularly right now, and everyone at some point could probably use groceries delivered, but like, even how are you like supporting the community that you're in if it's not a direct text or face-to-face or something there, so that you're still tied in.
For sure.
But maybe you just can't like physically show up all the time.
For sure. It all counts. All matters.
Yeah, right. Everything you're doing still counts and matters. And I think similar again, like that's the point to drive home that we are all just doing the best that we can with the resources that we have. And even if you pick one lane, if you have a 3D printer and you're going to print the whistles, like you're doing so much for your community by doing that.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
And that's enough. And those are like, that part is like where the conversation then takes like a bigger turn of like, it's okay that that's enough. You can only do so. Like,
sure.
I don't know what I was, it was probably on social media because the doom scrolling is like so real right now.
Me too.
But it was like, we are a society of millions of people because one person is not meant to do it all. So if you can pick your one thing and do that really well, someone else is going to pick up the something else and do that really well. And that's
100%.
That's how this works. And I think going back to your point, like I'm getting like goosebumps and like emotional, like that's what makes, that's also like what makes Minneapolis so beautiful and powerful and like why we are surviving right now.
I know, it's making me tear up a little too. I know, we're amazing. The strength in numbers, connections, the interconnected web.
Yeah, it really is. And just to see like the outpouring of support from all over the world and like other states and other people.
Yes.
Community is really up for interpretation at this point, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's a broad umbrella term. I love that you were bringing up that word enough, because I mean, I think we just hear it in folks we work with, even outside of these contexts. People feel not enough, not good enough, not lovable. We hear that in so many contexts. In this context, it's like, I think no single action could really ever feel like enough. And people trying to do too much in order to achieve enough get very burned out and can get very, it can kind of backfire. So I love you honing in on that. What do we do with that word enough? It's really complex. And I think sitting with people as they're kind of navigating what does enough mean for me is huge.
Yeah. And recognizing that everyone has a different level of capacity. Like,
yeah. And that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm only doing one small thing right now for my community. And there's parents who are like 1000% doing way more than I am. And they have capacity for that. And that's amazing. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so
for sure.
Yeah. Final resources, thoughts, where can listeners find you? I'll link everything that we talked about today in the show notes that is linkable.
Great.
But what are some final thoughts or words for people who are listening as we wrap up?
Yeah. I think I mentioned my favorite resource, Active Hope, the book by Joanna Macy. I think it's amazing. Yeah, I can be found at carsonbrownmd.com. And yeah, I think I like the note you're ending on of I'm trying to just really encourage people when acting is starting to harm you, when you're getting out of that window of like what your actual capacity is. I'm just really trying to encourage people to pay attention to the signals coming from their own body and mind that are telling them I need a break or this is too much, and not letting kind of guilt or shoulds override that. Because a lot of people end up in my office having overridden it for a long time. And that's okay. We can help them come back and restore, but heeding those signals to take a pause and know that other people will step in when you have to pause.
And should doesn't mean you can or have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should doesn't mean you can or have to.
Love that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, I will link all of that in the show notes so people can find you. Thank you so much for having this conversation to me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I didn't know exactly what direction we would go, but this is so rich and just covered so much ground and just feels community building and connecting just in itself. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.